How's it going, everyone? My name is Broken Pinky. I am, once again, your coach of the Houston Dracos. And welcome back to the final week of the UBL Invitational, at least for the regular season. Last week, we squared up against our good friend, the Fat Rat. And we were able to come out victorious in a very narrow, very haxy margin. And that guaranteed our spot in playoffs. Guaranteed our first place. Well, actually, it didn't guarantee us being first place in our division, but it guaranteed us our playoff spot, or final bracket spot. You know what I mean. So this last week is kind of just for fun. I'm guaranteed in the final bracket. Gig is guaranteed out of the final bracket. So there's not a whole lot riding on this match, except for pride. And pride is very important to me. I'll tell you a bit of a story regarding my play in Season 16 of the UBL. So Season 16 was my first full season of the UBL after a really long hiatus. I think roughly a 1.5 to 2 year hiatus from the UBL. And in that time, I started playing VGC. I started playing doubles a little bit. And I thought, you know what? I'll get back into some draft league for doubles. We'll see how this goes and whatnot. And so Season 16 is my first season back. And I go on a Cinderella run, to say the least. I draft a really, I draft a team centered around Ursaluna Blood Moon, which is a really strong Pokemon. I have like an Ogerpon Wellspring. I have some Tail Room stuff. I basically have Blood Moon, Ursaluna, Tail Room. And I have a really, really good season. I beat Nobody. I beat Rat. I beat Winda. I beat Canner. I beat so many really strong players. And it culminated in week 8 of the regular season. Me and Gig were the last, Gig was my last opponent. And whoever won gets a bye and gets the number 1 overall seed for the season. And gets to skip around the playoffs. So I was really wanting to win that matchup. Problem is that matchup was really hard. Gig had a Primarina, a Mega Salamence, I think a Goldango as well. Really scary team that matched up really well into my team. Luckily for me, though, Gig would forfeit that set due to not having time to actually play it out. So I was able to get that win. I was able to get my round 1 bye. I was able to get my number 1 seed. Lo and behold, my first matchup in playoffs is Gig once again. And I play against him in this really awful matchup. That is essentially unwinnable from the word go. And yeah, I lose 0-2. Gig goes on to beat Rat and win the season. So I'm playing for a little bit of redemption here. I'm trying to get my run back against Gig. And to show that I really have grown in a short time since that season. Unfortunately, Gig has a really, really strong team once again. And it once again has a really good matchup into my team. So let's break it down a little bit. He has Rillaboom, which is the Pokemon that I wanted round 1. He sniped it a few picks before me, which is really annoying. But, oh well. He has Primarina, which is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. It's not, and it hits my team pretty hard, but it's not super duper amazing. He has Heatran, which is interesting. Interesting typing. Interesting move pool. Kind of an awkward speed stat. Spectrier, which in this format without Terra, kind of just serves as a fast supportive piece that can potentially get out of hand with Grimnade boosted Shadow Balls against a team without a lot of Ghost Resists. And my team does not have a lot of Ghost Resists, so Spectrier could be a bit of a problem. Roaring Moon, which is kind of a stand-in for Mega Salamence. Really fast, Tailwind Setter. Dragon and Dark are really good offensive types. And against a team like mine that does not have a lot of strong fairy attacks, it can be kind of annoying to get off the field. Good move pool. Knockoff, Tailwind, Breaking Swipe, Acrobatics, just really good moves. Audino's pretty bad. What it does in this matchup is it sets Trick Room. And as we saw a few weeks ago, Trick Room can be pretty scary against my team, and all of Gig's Pokemon are in a good, Tail Room speed stat, I like to call it, these 3 especially. So they can function really well with either Roaring Moon or with Mega Audino. Basculin, I tried to find a use case for Basculin. It was really hard. The use case I found is that it can set up Rain Dance faster than Modest Landorus can click Sancier Storm. And it can Icy Wind faster than Primarina can. And then Table is here as a Trick Room attacker. And then Landorus is the last actual Pokemon. And it hits my team really, really hard with Sancier Storm. So Landorus is definitely a big problem. Yeah, I definitely, made fun of this team a good amount in playoffs and in testing with friends, because This team kind of only has one win condition for what I've seen, and that is either you use one of these two guys to get your speed control, and then you use spread attacks with your Primarina, your Heatran, and your Landorus, and you hope that Rillaboom can enable it and work well. So it's very one-dimensional. It only has one strategy. Unfortunately, that one strategy is pretty good into my team. Kind of how this matchup works is it's a weird game of Foursquare, where Sneasler shreds this entire team except for Landorus, which beats the Sneasler. But Blastoise beats the Landorus, except the Rillaboom beats the Blastoise. But the Sneasler beats the Rillaboom, which loses the Landorus, which loses the Blastoise. It's just a weird game of Foursquare, of like four-sided rock, paper, scissors, where like Sneasler goes insane into Gig's team, Landorus goes insane into my team, and there's like one good check to both of them. So it's just going to be about who... It's a big position game, it's a big read game. It's hard to have a consistent, clean matchup into this team. So hard, in fact, that me and my good friend Winda stayed in call for 2 hours, and we made a game plan. So there's a brief look at that. Yeah, I guess to peel back some more of the curtain, I did not have any time this week. There's also a reason why this is, spoiler alert, post-com, because I was so exhausted on the day we played the game that I said, okay, I can't play and talk at the same time. I just stayed in my bed and I played on my laptop instead of actually getting on my setup. So yeah, I was very dead. So that's why it's post-com, unfortunately. But yeah, literally Friday, which was the day of the game, was the first day I had time to actually dedicate to this matchup. So I woke up at like 8:30, hopped on a call with Winda for 2 hours, and we just bashed our head into the wall with this matchup. And this is the result of that work. This team, at least, is the result of that work. First off, Klefki finally comes off the bench. Reflect, Light Screen, Dazzling Gleam, and Trick Room. As I said, Gig's team, it's about speed and it's about power, and Klefki is my best way of dealing with both of those aspects. Dual Screens is really good into his team. Dazzling Gleam hits the Roaring Moon pretty hard. It is about 60 to 70%. And Trick Room is nice to reverse the speed order and also to reverse Audino's Trick Room should it come and set it up. Max Spadef is here just so that it can it survives modest Life Orb Landorus Earth Power through Light Screen. Plus Gig's team leads more special than physical, and I'm not too worried about the physical attacks from the Rillaboom and the Roaring Moon once I have Reflect up, aside from like high horsepower or Earthquake, but grassy terrain is going to be up in this battle for most of the time, so I'm not too worried about Earthquake. Next up, Sneasler. I said it's really strong into Gig's team. It sure is. We're bringing the Unburdened set. We have Fake Out, CC, Dire Claw, Protect. I toiled a lot over this slot between Throat Chop and Protect, because Spectre is kind of the only answer into Sneasler other than the Landorus, at least defensively. So I was like, oh, should it be Throat Chop? But I thought there was enough on my team for the Spectre that I didn't really need Throat Chop. And I can always Dire Claw it and hope for something funny to happen. Enough attack to hit the bump with an Adamant Nature. Enough speed to outrun Timid Landorus. And then enough HP to get Grassy Terrain Recovery to be divisible by 16. And then 4 in each defense. Pretty simple stuff for the Sneasler. I did run a bulkier Sneasler at first, I think to live like Primarina Hyper Voice and something like that. But I figured with dual screens, it's more important for me to just outrun the Landorus and Tailwind than to try and be cheeky with Prim stuff. Because even if I can't hit the Landorus, this lets me like live a Roaring Moon Acrobatics with my Grassy Seed and then CC'd for the KO before Landorus killed me. Tabo Bulu is really, really strong in this matchup. We're running Miracle Seed Woodhammer with, again, enough attack to hit the bump, because that actually Okos the Landorus from full. So that's really nice. If I can get Tailwind up and there's no Tailwind on Gig's side, Tapu Bulu does a lot of damage with Woodhammer. CC also hits really hard into stuff like the Roaring Moon and the Rillaboom, which are the main grass resist. And I mean, just look at this team. Woodhammer for max attack with Miracle Seed in grassy terrain hits so hard. Oh yeah, CC also hits the Heatran. But everything else gets clobbered by Woodhammer pretty hard. I could have run Life Orb. I was pretty close to running Life Orb, but I decided on Miracle Seed. I was also Aqua Berry for a bit to deal with the Heatran a bit better, but the Calc on the Landorus is too important for how scary Landorus is. And then I have Taunt to stop Trick Room from going up from the Audino. If I just want to lead like Sneasler and Bulu, that's kind of my way of doing that. And then the speed is important. 110 speed, I am out creeping a speed creep, because basically the main benchmark that I feel like Gig has to hit with this slower Pokemon is fast enough to outrun my Dragapult and Tailwind. So, the speed you need to do that is 107. And that's the speed, or I think, no, 108. 107 or 108 Sorry. 107 speed on something like Heatran or Primarina outruns Dragapult after Tailwind 100% of the time. So this is 110 speed to outrun that. You might be asking, why is it 110, not 109 or 108? Blastoise is 108, and there was a Magmortar that was 109, and I forgot to change the speed back after I took it off the team. So technically, the more optimal thing would be to do this, but oh well. And I like knowing for sure that my Bulu is faster than my Blastoise, just so I know how things are going to play out, you know? Speaking of Blastoise, we are running 4 attacks Blastoise this week. I couldn't fit Protect because the coverage is too important. Ice Beam, Aura Sphere, Terrain Pulse, and Fake Out. We have enough defense to live 2 Grassy Glides from Zero Attack Adamant Rillaboom, I'm pretty sure, is the benchmark we went for. Again, 76 speed to outrun, to speed creep the speed creep. Enough special attack to hit the bump, and then an extra point is Spadef, just to be chillin'. Ice Beam, Aura Sphere, Terrain Pulse, Fake Out. Just, you know, Ice Beam, Aura Sphere, Terrain Pulse. Ice Fighting Grass has good coverage into Gig's team. The only thing I'm really missing is like Dark Pulse to hit Spectrier, and maybe Flash Cannon to hit Audino. But Flash Cannon doesn't get boosted by Mega Launcher. Aura Sphere is nice to hit both the Roaring Moon and the Heatran, whereas I had, you know, a Water move which would only hit the Heatran. And Terrain Pulse is nice to just absolutely nuke the Primarina. Because with in Grassy Terrain, I think it's 195 base power when you account for the double boost, plus the Grassy Terrain boost, plus the Terrain Mega Launcher boost. So yeah, pretty strong move. Blastoise hits really hard, and like I said, it's my best answer for the Landers, especially when the screens are up. We're running back a Specs Dragapult from this week. Specs pulled his team incredibly hard and outruns everything aside from a booster speed Roaring Moon. Draco Meteor, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, and U-Turn. I toiled a bit if I wanted Flamethrower to hit the Rillaboom, but I thought that these 4 were just better. Again, enough HP to get the extra healing from Grassy Terrain. You'll notice all of my Pokemon have HP stats divisible by 16, except for Klefki, for that exact reason. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory stuff. Specs Draco Meteor just hits the team really hard, and it threatens to OHKO most stuff on the roster. It OHKOs the Roaring Moon, it OHKOs the Landorus, it has a good chance of OHKOing the Spectrier, it does a lot of damage to Rillaboom, and Shadow Ball just hits hard. Aside from that, T-Bolt for the Prim, pretty self-explanatory stuff. And then we're running back a Wind Power Kilowattrel this week with Tailwind, Thunderbolt, Air Slash, and Eerie Impulse. Eerie Impulse was a good tech to help deal with the Landorus a little bit more, the Heatran and the Primarina as well, but mainly the Landorus, as Kilowattrel can't really touch it. Aside from that, Charged Thunderbolt hits really hard. I almost went for Focus Sash plus it's competitive, but I decided on Cobra Cloak and Wind Power, because Cobra Cloak is just such a good item on Kilowattrel to help deal with Fake Out, especially when I don't have Protect. And also to stop Snarl Drops if I don't have competitive. And although Electric isn't the best attacking type into Gig's team, with the charge, I am able to OHKO Primarina. I do a lot of damage to Heatran. I can OHKO some Spectriers. I can do a lot of damage to Audino. And yeah, I just thought that was a little bit more worth it to have. So, that's our 6. Oh, also, we're faster than the Landorus. Sneasler and Kilowattrel are the same speed stat. The only reason for that is, like, I don't think there's ever going to be a case where I have Sneasler and Kilowattrel on the field at the same time, and Sneasler does not have Unburden activated, so I should still always know the speed order. But yeah, that's the squad we're bringing into our last week. And yeah, here is the matchup here against Gig. He brings the Spectrier. He brings everything I expected, except, you know, I expected Audino over Spectrier. So I'm kind of kicking myself for not having Throat Chop on the Sneasler, but regardless, I've already kind of flowcharted what I want to do for game 1. So yeah, there's not really much more to talk about. Like I said, it's a very one-dimensional team that Gig is bringing, so we just kind of got to jump into it. The main leads I'm expecting are either Landorus Roaring Moon or Landorus Rillaboom. But yeah, let's just get into turn 1. I lead Blastoise and Kilowattrel into Spectrier Roaring Moon, so not at all what I was expecting. We see Photosynthesis activate for booster attack instead of booster speed. I don't know if that was on purpose, truth be told, but, you know, that's just good news for me. The bad news is that Kilowattrel is actually slower than both of these guys. more than likely, because I am modest, because I expected this thing to be booster speed, and I gave up on outspeeding it anyway. So that's kind of silly. But for this turn 1, I have a pretty free Fake Out and Tailwind. Spectre is not threatening Kilowattrel unless it crits a Shadow Ball or has like a boosting item, which I just don't think is very likely. So I go for Fake Out. He just rips a Snarl. And I get my Tailwind up. And from here, I have a pretty free play of just clicking Thunderbolt into the Spectre. The worst case scenario is that like this switches into Landorus and this switches into like Rillaboom if I go for Aura Sphere. And I could go for Ice Beam, which do decent damage into both, but then we kind of poorly set up for the next turn. So I just decided to be a little bit more proactive. And on this turn, I switch hard into Tapu Bulu. And I just go for Thunderbolt, and that just OHKOs the Spectre, as Gig sets up his own Tailwind, and brings in the Landorus. So, pretty good turn 1, or pretty good turn 2 for me. I think that Thunderbolt was a roll on the Spectre, unless it was like literally minus defense, or Spit F or whatever. So, good job Kilowattrel, getting a nice KO turn 1. And there is a staggered Tailwind situation going on. Gig has Tailwind going for one more turn than me, but that's fine. I have enough bulk in the back to deal with it. So from this position, both my Pokemon are pretty heavily threatened. Acrobatics in my Tapu Bulu does a lot of damage if it doesn't just kill outright. Sludge Bomb does a lot of damage into both my Pokemon. So I just had to reposition a little bit. I decided to go for Protect on my Bulu and just attack with my Kilowattrel. I let it go down to a Crunch, and just Sludge Bombs into my Bulu slot. Now I'm on my last turn of Tailwind, and I just bring in Blastoise, because Blastoise isn't super threatened by both of these, and I'm also threatening Fake Out this turn, which is something that Gig has to deal with. So I'm expecting to force a Protect, or at least for some targeting to go into the Bulu slot. And so I punish that by switching hard into Klefki. I ate a Crunch, which does a ton of damage to me, and it Sludge Bombs the Klefki slot as I go for Ice Beam and OHKO the Landorus. So this is a pretty great position for me. Last Pokemon is revealed to be Rillaboom. And this is the last turn of Gig's Tailwind. So, from this point of view, Reflect is extremely good. My Klefki is in a really good spot. I have Bulu as my last Pokemon, and behind Reflect, I'm not really threatened by much. So, but the downside here is that, like, Fake Out Crunch is pretty free. So yeah, it is Fake Out. I do get flinched, and I get crunched. So my Blastoise goes down. I could have swapped into Bulu, but I didn't want to risk taking a hit with Bulu. And from here, I have a pretty free play of Protect and Trick Room. There is some risk if my Klefki gets doubled up, as we see by how much Woodhammer does. But yeah, I just set up Trick Room, and now I go for Reflect. I go for CC with my Tapu Bulu. Woodhammer does substantially less without the grassy terrain and with Reflect up. CC just OHKOs the Roaring Moon, and at this point, it is a 2-against-1 against that Rillaboom. I'm able to find out some speed stats. That Rillaboom is faster than my Klefki, but my Bulu is faster than the Rillaboom, so that's good to know. We see the Bulu also has a good amount of bulk to take that little from CC. I do kind of risk the game here by going for a Protect play, but I wanted the style. I wanted to get Bulu another KO. And we're able to win game 1 up against Gig. I think the more optimal play there was always just to click Dazzling Gleam. I think that was a guaranteed win based on how much health Bulu had left. But yeah, I mean, I wanted the style a little bit. I wanted to get another KO for Bulu after it's good showing against Rat. So game 2 comes in, and I think, okay, a lot of my game plan for game 1 was centered around being afraid of Trick Room, but because I know Trick Room isn't really a play, I can go for a much faster, more aggressive mode that isn't as reliant on Tailwind and can just do more damage. So, starting in game 2, I lead off with Blastoise and Dragapult this time. I guess the same lead of Roaring Moon Spectre. And once again, I have a fairly free turn 1. I'm just going for Fake Out and Shadow Ball. I could go for Draco and risk the roll, or Shadow Ball's also risking the item, being Casted Berry on the Spectre. I don't really know anything about the Spectre other than it has Snarl, and it's faster than my Kilowattrel, but regardless, I decided to take the risk as Gig switches hard into Rillaboom, and I do go for the aforementioned play of Fake Out and Shadow Ball. I could have also just gone for Draco into the Moon, but I just preferred doing it like this. And at this point, both of my Pokemon are pretty heavily threatened by Crunch and Woodhammer respectively. And there is still a world where, like, okay, basically Gig has one of two plays. Either it is Crunch my Dragapult and Woodhammer my Blastoise, or it is Tailwind and Woodhammer my Blastoise. Either way, Blastoise is getting hit by a Woodhammer. The difference is, do I stay in with Polt and click Shadow Ball again? And I decide that's not really worth it. So I just go for a double switch. I reveal that Sneasler is being brought to this game after sitting out last time, and Klefki is my last one. So I reveal all 4 of my Pokemon. Woodhammer once again does about 50% to Klefki. His Tailwind goes up, but with my Unburden activated, Sneasler is again super duper fast. It's the fastest thing on the field. Dire Claw is gonna knock out the Rillaboom from there, and I get my Reflect up. Landorus comes in, and this is just a pretty free protect and go for Light Screen, sacking off my Klefki as I see Psychic on the Spectrier, and Earth Power knocks on my Klefki. Crit did not matter. So this position is where a little bit of controversy happens. Basically, I have a pretty free play of just going for Ice Beam into Landorus and going for the double protect my Sneasler. Blastoise is not really threatened behind dual screens. Sneasler can't really do much in this position, as we are on the last turn of Tailwind. It's kind of hard to see behind Blastoise's big UI, but this is the last turn of my opponent's Tailwind. And once it goes away, Sneasler can be pretty threatening with the Unburden activated, going for Dire Claw stuff, but I have no reason not to go for a double protect this turn. And again, Blastoise is not really threatened behind Light Screen against these two. So I just go for the play of Protect, and I get the double Protect as I Ice Beam the Landorus, who also protects. Psychic does not do anything to my Sneasler. And now the Tailwind is expired, and now Sneasler is faster again. And now that Sneasler's faster, it can click a very funny move. Goes for the Dire Claw, into the Spectre, and I get the Sleep. Spectre stays asleep, Sandsphere comes out, misses my Blastoise, misses my Sneasler, and Ice Beam Okos the Landorus. And at this point, the game is guaranteed over. Gig forfeits, but from this position, I have a free CC into the Roaring Moon and Ice Beam into the Spectrier, which doesn't knock it out, and then Sneasler goes for the Dire Claw to knock out the Spectrier, and even if it wakes up and goes for Psychic into my Sneasler, I can bring in the Dragapult, knock it out with a Shadow Ball. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, the game was over, and even if, like, it goes for Protect, and it stays asleep, I can bring in my Dragapult, and it would have to get a double Protect, because one more Ice Beam knocks out the Spectrier, and Shadow Ball does not even KO my Dragapult from there, so yeah, the game was entirely over. Even if we go back a few turns from this position, even if Sneasler gets taken out here, that's still the end of Tailwind, and I just have a free Ice Beam and Draco Meteor to knock out both of the Pokemon. And then, or even Shadow Ball Ice Beam, Shadow Ball the Spectre, Ice Beam the Landorus, and then the Roaring Moon comes back and I just knock it out. So, I was very likely to win this position, but, you know, getting the 1-3 Protect, plus the 1-6 Dire Claw Sleep, plus 2 1-5 Sandsphere dodges, definitely lucky. But, yeah, with that being said, we get a little bit more luck to finish out the season, and we were able to go 3-0 in the regular season, beating Gig 2-0. So I'm glad to avoid Game 3. I'm glad to avenge my loss in Season 16, and I'm glad to be the #1 seed in my pool after, you know, really doubting myself. I wasn't sure how far this team would go. Truth be told, you know, we can look at the standings here. I am right here at the top. The rest of these games haven't been played, though. But yeah, I was really unsure of how far this team would go. Just because I was being really experimental. And truthfully, some of these experiments have been better than others. Bulu's been impressing me for sure. Kilowattrel's been doing better than I expected. But some mods like Crocodile and Megmortar have definitely not been as good as I was hoping for. But even still, I'm proud of myself for how I've been able to use these Pokemon. And I'm happy with my play, as we're going to be going into the final bracket the next week against one of either Window or Canner as a round 1 match. And honestly, my only goal is to win one game, because that is progress from my previous seasons. But that being said, thank you all for watching the regular season of the UBL Invitational. I will see you guys next week for round 1 of the final bracket. Take care, have a good one.